Welcome back to our Ask the Vet video series with Dr. Lydia Gray, SmartPak's staff veterinarian and medical director. I'm SmartPaker Sarah, and we are here to ask and answer the questions that have been asked and voted on by you guys. As a reminder, for future videos, you can ask questions on Facebook, Instagram, right here on YouTube. You can go to Twitter. You can email us at customercare@smartpak.com, or you can ask in the comments on our blog. There's so many ways. Yeah, basically, sometimes if you say it really, really loud in your own barn, we might even hear you, because SmartPakers are everywhere. If you do have a question, though, you might want to check out our playlist, because we've been doing these videos all year, and we have a lot of the really commonly asked questions have already been answered. Yeah. So you can get your answer right away if there's already a video that exists for it. If your question does get voted into the top 5, you will be eligible for a SmartPak gift card, which is awesome. So not only does your question get answered on the air, you get a gift card, which can help with holiday shopping, because we have gifts for every rider on your list, and horse, as Newman knows. And believe it or not, some folks out there still haven't claimed their rewards. So if you have not gotten your gift card for having your question answered, email us at customercare@smartpak.com, and we'll get you all set up.
Perfect.
With all of that out of the way, I think we're ready.
I'm ready.
And our first question is from Haley on YouTube, and she's wondering, what is the difference between hot and cold therapy, i.e. sweating the leg and icing or cold hosing, respectively? Okay. And under what circumstances should each be used?
Yeah, that's good. So we brought a selection of various heating and cooling methods. And it really comes down to personal preference and what your veterinarian says. So let's start with cooling, let's say. You would use cooling when there's an acute situation. So usually the first 24, 48, maybe up to 72 hours, so 1 to 3 days. And it would be an injury, maybe there's a surgery that your vet says, icing would be good. Maybe you're rehabbing a horse and you're bringing him back to work. So those things where you'd want to keep the swelling down, keep the inflammation, the inflammatory mediators down, and make the horse more comfortable. It helps with pain also. I mean, we all know from personal experience when it hurts, you put ice on it. But you just do that in the acute phase, so early. You always use your vet's advice. I wouldn't try to diagnose or treat anything without looping my vet in and making sure that, because you don't put ice water, an ice water bath is the best way to cool something, but you wouldn't want to do that with an open wound, say. Okay. So it's things like that that's really good to have your vet's advice and say, am I doing this right? Am I making the right decision? Then other rules of thumb are 20 minutes is about how long is good. You would do it maybe 3-4 times a day. If it's a really serious situation, you could use cold hydrotherapy for 20 minutes every 3 to 4 hours. So much more often right away, and then you would back off a little bit. So let's go to then heat therapy. Yeah. So kind of the opposite. Heat therapy opens up the circulation, opens up the blood vessels. So vasodilation, or cold was the vasoconstriction. And it gets the blood flowing, it gets healing substances in there, it removes waste products. And it's also good for if you have a soft tissue, a muscle spasm or tightness, the heat allows it to stretch out and relax and become, the tissue becomes extensible. So sometimes you will combine the heat therapy with massage or stretching. It's why, whether it's a horse or human, we say stretch after you've warmed up, because the tissues, it's much safer, and the tissues will be able to lengthen more if there's some heat in there. The ways you can provide heat therapy are, again, with water. So you can use warm water hose. You can use one of those turbulator boots, with the water, but make it not ice and cold water, but warm water. A vet might use a therapeutic ultrasound, and that will get a little bit deeper than we can all get at home in our barns with water therapy, moist therapy. So did I answer everything?
I think so.
There's lots of details about it. The other rule of thumb with heat therapy is don't do anything hotter than your hand can stand, because then that's too hot for your horse's skin. So.
Okay. Our next question is submitted by Mackenzie, who emailed CustomerCare@SmartPak.com. And
Okay.
Mackenzie, this is her second month in a row having a question voted into the top 5, which is fantastic.
They're getting it. They're getting the hang of it.
It's exactly right. Well, because you can vote as many times as you want, and you can recruit your friends. Mackenzie is wondering, how do you break down and interpret the guaranteed analysis on a feed label? Are you Mackenzie?
No, I'm not, but that's excellent question, and I brought some of my favorite reading materials. This lovely lavender book is, we call it the AFCO Manual.
And it's a quick read.
And you can tell I'm reading it because it's marked, right? It stands for the Association of American Feed Control Officials, and it's one of the resources we use here along with the NRC, the nutrient requirements of horses, and that's how we just make sure we're correct with what the requirements are to feed horses every day, what labels say, what our labels say. So I'm not sure exactly what she's asking. I'm just going to take a stab at it. The things you see on labels are, of course, the product name, the species it's for, the class. So like the species would be horse and the class would be foal, breeding, adult, okay, the different life stages, okay. The quantity, so a bag of feed would be 50 pounds, a smaller thing might be 5 pounds, that has to be on there. The manufacturer or distributor name and address, so you can find them if you have questions. The purpose statement, like who and what it's for, and then of course the GA, which is the guaranteed analysis. That tells you usually some things are in percentages and some things are in parts per million, and some things are in international units, and there's reasons for that. This group got together and said, let's standardize it so we're all talking the same thing, so we're all talking apples to apples. For example, feed labels are on an as-fed basis, so actually what's in the bag versus a dry matter basis, when you suck all the moisture out.
Okay.
So you have to know which you're talking about, and feed labels are as-fed. Things you will always see on a label are crude protein, crude fat, and crude fiber. You'll also then see a few minerals like calcium and phosphorus, and maybe a few vitamins like vitamin A and vitamin E. Going back to the crude protein, that's one that's always in percentage. So a typical horse feed might say 10% crude protein. And I know people talk in terms of, oh, I'm feeding at 10% or 12% or 14%. That's a little bit important, but you kind of have to do the math out and say, if I'm supposed to feed, like the one I looked at here for this, you're supposed to feed 3.5 pounds a day for a 1,000-pound horse, and it's 10% crude protein. So if you do the math, 10% of 3.5 pounds is 0.35 pounds, which is about 5.5 ounces, and then it works out to 160 grams, because I did the math first, so I'd have a good example.
That's wise.
That's the what you need to eventually get to. So you know that feeding 3.5 pounds of this particular grain provides 160 grams of protein. Now, a horse doing nothing at this size will need 500 to 600 grams of protein a day. So the rest is coming from hay. So the 160 grams is what the grain is providing. That's just an example of how you use the information, the numbers on the label, and break it down, incorporate math, get to a usable number. So I'm not sure if that's what she's asking, but that's how I use it.
Yeah, and I think it's helpful. You were talking about a horse in no work needs a certain amount, and you and horse owners out there can learn those things from a book like Nutrient Requirements of Horses, which can tell you what the requirements are. Then you take a look at what you're feeding, how much you're feeding, figure out what your horse is actually getting, and is he getting enough, or do you need to add something to give him a little bit more?
The other thing I thought of was a regular fortified grain might be at 10%. Then there's these things called ration balancers, and they sound scary at 30% protein, but you're feeding 3 pounds of the 10% grain, and you're feeding 1 pound of the 30%, so you come out to exactly the same amount of grams of protein at the end. So don't be scared off by the low or high percent. You have to multiply it by how much you're feeding to get the actual weight that your horse is getting that day.
Okay. A scoop is not just a scoop.
Oh my goodness.
Across all brands. It makes a difference. Our third question is submitted by Nicole, who asked on YouTube. This is a long one, so
Okay, I'll just sit here.
Yeah, okay. I know during the fall and winter it is a lot easier for horses to become dehydrated. Because of the cooler temperatures, they aren't as inclined to drink their water as they are in the hotter months. This was the reason my horse got impaction colic last week. Oh, that's a bummer. It was a very scary experience and I really don't want it to happen again. What are some ways to encourage horses to drink during the fall and winter months and make sure they stay hydrated, other than keeping fresh water in front of them all the time and providing a salt lick?
Okay.
Nobody likes colic.
Nobody likes colic. So I was really tickled when I read this one because there's a piece of research. It might be my favorite research ever.
Oh.
I know, and we get to
I'm
talk about it
excited.
today, and we'll put
I'm
it on
very
the
excited.
screen. So, because it's volume
early
this and
Christmas
issue-
for you.
Oh my goodness, it's just the gift that keeps on giving. So, what this research says, and it's been here's why I like it. It's been misinterpreted for years.
A good myth. We all love a good myth.
Oh, so there's a behavior group out of New Bolton Center in Pennsylvania, and they have this herd of feral or wild ponies.
Oh, adorable.
Yeah. And they said, we want to solve this drinking winter cold issue question once and for all. So what they did was they measured if we give a herd of ponies warm water, do they like that? Do they drink it? And they cold water. And what they found was horses, ponies, prefer, drum roll, cold water.
What? How cold?
Like
Very cold.
No, like 40.
Okay.
In the 40s.
Okay.
They like cold water best. If there's 3 buckets sitting, cold, warm, hot, they'll go to the cold.
Okay.
But they don't drink as much.
Oh.
They'll take a sip of the cold and oh, that was delicious. If there is take away the cold and now there's only warm water available, they'll drink it and they'll drink more.
Oh, interesting.
So
I could see that.
Yeah, they prefer cold, but they drink more warm. So the key takeaway from this research is make sure your only source of water for the horse is warm, and then they will drink more.
But if you provide both, they're just
They'll
going to keep
drink a
sipping
little
on the
bit
cold.
of the cold, and
Okay.
then you could run into trouble.
Okay.
Isn't that fascinating?
That's pretty cool.
And it's kind of backwards what we all think, and
Right.
it's backwards of what many people took away from it. But the primary researcher, every once in a while, she comes out and she goes, "You guys, you got this all wrong. They prefer cold, but they drink more warm.
They don't always know what's best for them.
They hardly ever
horses-
know what's best for
These
them."
horses and I'm sure extremely adorable feral ponies.
Oh yeah. So I'm so glad I was able to share that research.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I think that's awesome. Is there anything other than salt lick that would encourage a horse to drink more readily in the wintertime?
Most people know I'm not a fan of salt licks.
I know,
because,
that's why I wanted to give you another chance to answer it.
They were made for cattle, and if you've ever been licked by a cow, you know it's really, really rough. Their tongues are like sandpaper. And
But also adorable.
but also adorable. And horses don't have tongues like that, and they don't enjoy licking a salt lick, and they won't get the amount that they should, because the minimum requirement for a day is 1 ounce. That's about 2 tablespoons. So imagine having to lick a hard thing that's rough to get 2 tablespoons of salt. I mean, I can't imagine. But so there, you can top dress the feed with salt. Still not very palatable. There are pellets made with tastier substances that
That sneak the salt in there too.
and so horses like them, or smart salt pellets. You can also just go with electrolytes that have sodium chloride in them. So something like that will stimulate thirst in your horse. It takes a while. The mechanism is the salt goes in the body, in the digestive system, and it draws water from the blood. Then the blood becomes more concentrated, right? Which sends a signal to the brain, I'm too concentrated, drink more and dilute me. And that's how it happens. Now, it doesn't happen in minutes, it takes hours. So we tell people, plan at least 4 hours. Like if you're going somewhere or whatever, don't give salt and then immediately expect the horse to be hydrated. It takes a while for these feedback mechanisms to work.
Okay.
But-
While we're on the subject of
Yes.
this, can we bust one of my favorite myths,
I
which
do.
is people think if you have a powdered electrolyte, you can just throw that in your horse's water bucket and then he's drinking Gatorade and he will feel so refreshed and hydrated.
Oh, and I even wrote down here to make sure to say, If you choose to put your salt or electrolytes in water.
I didn't even know that, but I set you up perfectly.
No,
I'm very excited about this.
If you choose to do that, you must provide a second bucket of plain water with nothing in it, because otherwise you're defeating the whole purpose. You're giving them salt to cause them to drink plain water to restore volume and hydration. If the only fluid they have is super concentrated, you're not really helping.
You're just making them thirstier and thirstier, and they drink more of the super concentrated salty water.
Yeah, so they're getting more of the electrolytes, the sodium, the chloride, the calcium, the phosphorus, magnesium, all those things in there. And what they need is more fluid.
So if you're trying to proactively hydrate your horse, consistent daily doses of salt in their feed, always the best bet.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question, submitted by 2 equestrian girls. You guys are going to have to split the gift certificate. And this question's not on the back of the paper. It's on a second page. And they are wondering, when should you switch your horse to a senior feed? Oh,
Okay.
that's a great question.
That's a fair question.
I love senior horses.
I do too. I think some of my earliest articles and blogs and videos were senior. When I think of a senior horse, and that age gets older and older and older as we're providing better and better care, it's more what your horse is telling you. Like I had a horse that was 12, 13, 14. He was like, I'm old. But then I know horses in their 20s who were like, yippee, I'm not old. And I just saw a video yesterday of one.
Yep.
So you got to let your horse tell you. Your horse will tell you when he feels old. And the scientific word for that is physiological age. So it's when the horse's body begins to not be as efficient as it used to be. And that occurs across the board. So it's the digestive system loses efficiency, the immune system doesn't work as well, skin not quite as resilient, just everything, soft tissues, joints. And then you begin to say, what can I do? What can I change in his diet and maybe the management to help him cope as his body begins to just not be not spring back like it used to. And it might be more protein because the top line's fading. It might be more B vitamins, more vitamin C. It might be a different ratio of calcium to phosphorus. It might be that he loses weight and you need to feed more because the same amount of food that made him look great when he was 10, he needs more now that he's 20 because he's just not extracting the nutrition as well out of it. Maybe he needs some digestive support, some probiotics, some enzymes or yeast.
Okay. Our next question is submitted by Hunter Jumper Princess, who is rumored to be the daughter of the dressage queen.
Stop it.
It was a dad joke for our videographer.
Yep.
And so Hunter Jumper Princess is wondering, are round bales healthy enough for horses to eat? Do they provide enough minerals to help maintain a healthy diet in horses?
Interesting that they went with minerals specifically, because that wouldn't be where I go. So, gosh, I feel like I'm the negative Nelly here, but I don't like salt blocks. I don't like round bales. What do I like, you know?
You like research?
I do.
Feral ponies?
Oh, shoot, thank God. So
we like a lot of things.
Round bales, they have their place. They're easy, they're cheaper, they're convenient. So if you're not out there every day, you can put a round bale down and the horses have food. But to me, the risks outweigh the benefits in that you don't know what each horse is getting. And I've seen horses pushed off round bales, not allowed their space in, and it's typically the seniors, you know.
Which is wrong.
Which is wrong, because they're already losing weight and having problems, and then they're getting bullied off the round bale. So you have to make sure that there's space for everybody. The hardest thing, though, is it takes a little bit of effort to make the hay in a round bale remain quality. Because if you sit a round bale out in the weather, I mean, we wouldn't sit a square bale out in the rain and leave it for days and weeks.
Right.
But that's how many people feed round bales. So if you want to keep a round bale, they can start out with really high quality hay. But
because they're grown the same exact way as square bales, it's just how they're baled.
Right. But if you don't set it up off the ground, if you don't cover it, then it's going to get wet, it's going to mold. The other thing in some parts of the country, because of the way it's wrapped and air doesn't get into the middle, it gets into the outer edges, if you're in an area of the country that has botulism, that's a risk. So there's some risks to round bales. They do make small whole hay nets that fit round bales.
Oh.
So it slows
So it's a
consumption.
very large small whole hay net.
Correct.
Okay.
Versus a very small large whole hay net.
Which would be confusing.
Yeah. So you can slow consumption down. You can regulate it, make it more consistent. You can reduce wastage. Wastage is a big problem with the round bales because they step on it. They'll defecate and urinate on it. But it just is such inconsistent nutrition as you penetrate further into the round bale, and if it's left to the environment exposed, I can't tell who's eating what, and the easy keepers tend to gorge themselves on it, and the hard keepers are like, no, I'm good, and so it works for some people, and it doesn't work for everyone. It's not a recipe for set it out and leave your horses. I think you still have to observe your horses closely, hopefully every day.
So if it's not really well managed, it's likely that a round bale isn't going to be able to provide a square meal.
What is with you today?
These are all dad jokes for Nels. They were all fed to me beforehand, and I could not resist. Lucky for you, that was our last question.
Ooh, and the last of the jokes.
So there's no more dad jokes for now. Thank you guys all for submitting your questions. Because it is the holiday season, we are going to be taking a month off of Ask the Vet. So that will give you guys all time to think of great questions and submit as many questions as you want. We'll be back with a video in February. And as our gift to you, and because our next video is going to be our 1-year anniversary, we're going to be having a little surprise. And I don't think it's going to be more dad jokes, but I don't know. It could be. It's a surprise for you. And we still need your questions for the next video, so you have plenty of time to submit them. But if you have a question today, send it in today because we collect them and we love to see them. You can submit them again on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, email customercare@smartpak.com. You can write them right in the comments on the blog when we post this at blog.smartpakequine.com. And questions will be accepted until December 23rd. So you have plenty of time to get those questions in. Right up until the last minute, you can't even get Christmas gifts. Well, you can from SmartPak. We will still send your Christmas gifts, and you can get e-gift cards on Christmas Eve. So it's never too late to gift from SmartPak. But don't forget to vote on your questions. If you submit them, get your friends to vote. You can see get your dads to vote. That's exactly. Get your dads to vote. Get your fans of dad jokes to vote. Everybody get on in here. If your question was answered in this video or in a previous video, email us at customercare@smartpak.com or direct message us on YouTube, and we'll be able to take care of that for you right away. And subscribe so that you guys know when our next video is out in February, and you make sure not to miss the surprise for the 1-year anniversary.
I know, I will not be missing it.
The first is paper, right? So we just give each other our scripts.
I might give you.
My very own? Thank you. All right, well, until then, I have a lot of reading to do. So thanks for watching, and have a great ride.